65 years or 70 years or 80 years old, if she has got a husband living with her, then her mortality rate will be 1/3, whereas if someone is a widow and is not also a household head, because maybe she doesn't own any land or whatever, and she's not living with her son, maybe living with a brother or another family member, maybe with a daughter or with son-in-law or something like that, then her mortality rate will be 3 times higher. Okay? So there are variations there as well. So it's not that simple. So, but in a way, you can argue that yes, it's mostly the control over the resources, because the being widow is not sufficient. It could be being a widow and being a non-household head. Okay, because that widow may not have any resources, any land, because when her husband died, he has distributed the land amongst the son and daughter already. Okay, then she became widow, so she doesn't have any control over the resources. So she cannot influence the decision making in the household. Whether and it is very likely she'll be falling ill frequently, but she won't be able to see the doctor because she doesn't have control over the decision making. Okay. Right. But then what happens with this the younger one? Okay, let's say we have sorted out the elderly and the sick and the disabled. Okay, it's just because of the earning capacity. But then how do you explain the discrimination, if we find any discrimination between the young women versus young men? Then how do you explain that? Because that's not because of the earning capacity. Okay, because the women also can earn. But the problem here is that the young women, they perform various types of activities within the household which are not properly monetized. So when you allocate resources, you do not take into account their contribution properly, because it is very difficult. These are all household-based activities, and therefore we cannot really assign, or we do not assign a value to it. Okay, how much cost they have saved or how much contribution they have made. It's not their real earning, but it is basically their contribution in terms of the saving your expenditure. Okay? So because of that, since we cannot monetize their activities, so we may not estimate their productivity or the earning capacity properly, and therefore they will be discriminated. So that is one explanation, that why the productive women should receive less, or they do receive less in the allocation of the household resources. But it's not just about this monetization, or to what extent we can estimate the economic value or the shadow. We know that the shadow pricing, we can shadow price their activities. It's not just that, it is also because of the wage employment. Okay? Because even if that individual, even if those women, they participate in the labor market, still you will find that these individuals will be earning less, because it is the labor market imperfection. Okay? They receive less because the labor market is not treating them equally. Okay? And therefore, the households will reward according to their earning capacity. So if the labor market discriminates, if the labor market offers less wage to the women, then the household also will allocate less resources, because to them the men are more, male members are more productive because they earn more. Okay? But so it's not their earning capacity, it's not their productivity or the scale, it is how much they actually earn that will determine. And so it's not just the nutrition, it's not just your work capacity. Okay? It is also how much they actually earn can affect the household decision making. And also we know that there are imperfections in the rural credit market, and because of that, because of the lack of the imperfection in the access also will contribute to this earning capacity. So the person who will have access to the credit market will get more resources. Because if you don't have access to the credit market, it is very likely that you will not be able to rent in any land, and therefore giving you more resources will be wastage, because giving you more resources means you are expected to borrow some money from the credit market, and therefore you should be able to utilize your skill or work capacity or your energy in cultivating the land. But if you don't have access to the credit market, and therefore the household will know that you will not be able to borrow money, and ultimately you'll be getting less resources. Okay, let's say the food expenditure. Okay. So which means that it's not just all about the earning capacity. It's more than that. Okay. Okay. So here's the credit market. We have done this the discussion on this rural credit market when we discussed the inequality in growth the last teaching block, during the last teaching block. And here I'm just highlighting some of those issues that we have discussed in the tutorial. So we know that the formal credit market will require the collateral because there is a significant informational constraint, and so therefore these rural households where those who are really poor, they do not have access to this formal credit market. So therefore, they need to go to the informal market, in the rural credit market, and the informal credit market has got these characteristics. This market is segmented, which means that the access to the credit will depend heavily on the personalized relationship. It is not just your credit worthiness, or it's not just your productivity or earning capacity. It will be dictated by your relationship with the borrower. With the lender, and also the rural credit market is also interlinked in the sense that your profession can also determine to what extent you can have credit, because the interlinked credit market will segment the market depending on your occupation as well as your production relationship. Okay? Whether you sell your output to the trader or not, and whether you rent the land from the landlord, and then your lender should be your landlord as well. So if you've got this type, both relationship, the tenancy, the land tenancy, if you become a tenant, then you can borrow money from the landlord and so on. So it's the occupational relationship, it is the production relationship. So all these things will affect your access to the credit market. And also we know that there are significant variations of the interest rate, because it could be 0% or it could be 200 or 300%. So the variation is quite significant. Sometimes from the informal market, you can borrow money at a zero interest rate, okay, because of your relationship from your friends, from family members, from relatives, and so on. And also, it can be 10 to 12% per month. So if it is 10% per month, so it is in a straight way, it is 120% per year. But effectively, it is even more. So that's why this interest rate could be very high. So that will also create the distortion in the credit market, that with a high interest rate, many viable investment will become non-profitable at a high interest rate. Okay? And also there is a rationing through the imposing a limit, which means that it's not about the interest rate, it is also the amount that you can borrow, because sometimes these lenders, they do not allow you to borrow from multiple sources, and therefore you're restricted. You will have to depend on only one borrower, and if that borrower gives you £100, that's it. Even if you need £300, you can't go. You are not allowed to go to three lenders. Okay, so there is a restriction on the amount that you can borrow, because the multiple borrowing is highly discouraged in the rural credit market. So therefore, all these things can affect your access to the credit market, and therefore ultimately it will affect the household decision making as well. So it is external forces, it is the imperfection in the labor market, the imperfection in the credit market that will dictate what will happen, what sort of position you will have in your household as well. Okay? So these external variables or the factors also can influence the household decision making. Okay. Now here we have considered three types of allocation. The allocation of food, which is nutrition. Then we have got which is consumption need. And secondly, we have got expenditure on medicine and healthcare, health services. And then we have got thirdly, we have got expenditure on education. But here we can distinguish between the consumption and the investment, okay? Because the investment is a long-term commitment, and the consumption is a short-term thing. So, so therefore, we really cannot look at the allocation of resources or consumption investment in a similar way, because the determinants of consumption and the determinants of the investment are quite different. And so, because the determinants are different, the factors that can influence the consumption and investment, they are different, and therefore that will affect the household decision making as well. Okay? So far we did not distinguish between health, food, and education, but now we'll have to see them separately. Okay? So why is that? It's because suppose the household preferences is altruistic, so which means that you invest in the most productive individuals, and that most productive individuals will share the outcome. Okay? So the household will maximize its earning, and each individual also will be getting more. It is both efficient and equitable in a way. Remember the hypothesis last week I said that if you invest in the most productive person, then and if the return from this capacity enhancement investment, if the return is shared, then you can maximize both equity and efficiency at the same time. Okay? So if that happens, okay, that person who is receiving most of the resources, that person is really altruistic, therefore the household gains are shared. So which will ultimately ensure that the consumption is really smooth across the year. So this will smoothen the fluctuation in the short-term consumption. Okay. So during these off-peak season, or what we say that the lean agricultural season, only one person will receive, and that person will earn the maximum, and therefore the rest of the household members will be fed out of his or her income if the productivity gains are shared. So therefore, you can smoothen the fluctuation in consumption, but still the differences in the consumption, the differences in the investment, for example, the expenditure on education can have the long-run consequence. Okay, so you can address the short-run consequence even if the resources are shared. The short-run problem can be solved, the consumption problem can be solved, but still, what about the investment? Because that person is getting the money. Okay, so you are investing money in one, so that person is going to the school, receiving education, and that person will be earning high salary, and then the salary will be shared by all the household members. Okay, but still, the rest of the household members can have money to have the same level of consumption need, less the food, so they will not be ill or sick. But because you invested in only one child, not the other, so even if the child who received the education share his or her return from education, but still the inequality will persist in that society or in that household, okay? Because it will have long-run consequences. What are those? For example, the girls will grow up without any endowment that the family has created in their brothers. So even if the brothers are altruistic, still this type of altruism will not solve the problem, because the girls will have less endowment in the long run. Okay? In the short run, the brothers will be quite happy to help their sisters in the rural household, but these girls will grow up without enough endowment. Then what will happen? Then these girls will have low bargaining power both in the marriage market as well as in the labor market, okay? Which the brothers cannot solve. So the brothers can feed their sisters quite well, but they cannot ensure that their sisters have a better access in the marriage market and have equal access in the labor market, because it's not within their control. Okay? It's outside, it's external factors. Okay? So